You're not afraid of being alone. You're afraid of being left again. And there's a difference no one ever explained to you. You read the text one more time before you send it. Then, you wait. And when the reply doesn't come fast enough, your stomach tightens, your mind starts scanning everything you might have done wrong, and you refresh the screen like proof might suddenly appear. People call that clingy. It isn't. What looks like needing too much is really a nervous system that learned, very early on, that love could vanish without warning, that the people you needed most could go quiet one day and never once tell you why. If something in that already felt a little too familiar, go ahead and subscribe. We're about to put language to something you've been living for years without ever having a name for it. Because this pattern, the watching, the waiting, the quiet bracing, didn't start with the person who hasn't texted you back. It started in a much smaller room, a long time ago, behind a door you couldn't keep open. You're not clingy. You just learned that love can vanish without warning. Let's start with what actually happens in your body, because that's where the truth lives. Someone takes a little longer to reply, and something in your chest goes tight. Not annoyed, alert. A low hum of dread that says, quietly, here it comes again. You'll call it overthinking. You'll laugh it off, but notice the speed of it. How fast your whole system jumps to abandonment before there's any real evidence. That speed isn't a flaw in you. It's a memory, wearing the costume of the present moment. Here's the part nobody explains. The fear of being left isn't really about the person in front of you. It's about a feeling you knew long before you had words for it. Somewhere back there, love arrived and then disappeared, came close and then went cold. And you, small, watching, dependent, couldn't ask why. So you did the only smart thing a child can do. You started studying the signs. You became a reader of moods, a forecaster of who might leave. To really feel this, we have to go back. Picture a kitchen, late afternoon, the light going grey. A child is sitting at the table, doing something small, colouring, maybe, but really doing something else entirely. Watching the back of a parent who has gone quiet. Not yelling. Quiet. And that quiet is louder than any noise, because the child has learned that silence comes right before the love goes somewhere it can't follow. So the small body holds still, listening, bracing, waiting for the temperature to change. Now bring that child forward into your adult life. The quiet parent becomes the unanswered text. The cooling room becomes a tone you can't quite name in someone's voice. Your fear of silence isn't dramatic. It's accurate to a world you once lived in, where silence really did predict loss. This is what attachment theory calls anxious attachment, not a weakness, but a system that overcorrects toward connection because disconnection once meant danger. You're not too sensitive. You were trained, by repetition, to feel the flaw shift early. There's a study that captures this almost perfectly. In 1975, a researcher named Edward Tronick ran what he called the still face experiment. A mother plays warmly with her baby, then, on cue, goes blank, flat face, no response. Within seconds, the baby tries everything. Smiling, reaching, pointing, anything to bring her back. When nothing works, the baby crumples, distressed, then dysregulated. Tronick showed something haunting. We are wired to read a loved one's face for safety, and a child who reads it constantly never quite learns to stop. Sit with that for a second, because it reframes everything. The hypervigilance you carry, scanning faces, scanning texts, scanning the air for a shift, isn't paranoia. It's an ancient survival reflex that did its job. As a child, reading the room kept you ahead of the pain. If you could predict the withdrawal, maybe you could soften it. Maybe you could be good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough to keep the warmth from leaving. That same reflex is still running today. It just doesn't know the emergency is over. Let me tell you about a person, just one, who lived inside this loop for years. Every relationship followed the same script. The first sign of distance, and the racing thoughts would start. What did I do? Are they pulling away? Should I reach out, or would that make it worse? This person would draft a message, delete it, rewrite it softer, delete it again. From the outside, it looked like insecurity. From the inside, it felt like trying to stop a door from closing, a door that had closed before, without warning. And here's what this person didn't see for the longest time. The panic wasn't being caused by the partner. It was being triggered by them, pulled up from somewhere much older. Because to understand it, you have to go back to a night this person half remembers. A parent who left a room mid-sentence and didn't come back for a long time. No explanation given, no repair offered later. Just a child alone with a feeling too big to hold, deciding, silently, that closeness was a thing that could be revoked. Notice the word revoked. Not lost, revoked. A child who experiences love as something that gets taken back, suddenly and without reason, draws a logical conclusion. I must hold on tightly, or it'll be gone. That's not clinginess. That's protest behavior, a term from attachment research for what we do when a bond feels threatened. The reaching, the texting, the not letting go isn't neediness. It's a small alarm doing exactly what it was built to do, trying to pull a vanishing connection back before it disappears completely. And this is where it gets quietly devastating, because the very thing built to protect you now exhausts you. The constant overthinking every text, the bracing for rejection that never fully turns off, the way your body stays half-clenched even in a calm relationship, it's a tax you pay for a danger that's mostly behind you. Living this way is like keeping the smoke detector screaming long after the fire's out. The wiring isn't broken. It's just never been told, in a language it believes, that it's finally allowed to rest. So let's talk about how this wiring leaks into the small moments. It rarely shows up as some grand fear of abandonment with a name tag on it. It shows up disguised, as reading a one-word reply 9 times, hunting for the mood underneath, as apologizing for things that were never your fault, as saying you're fine when your chest is doing something else entirely. This is the quiet machinery of childhood emotional neglect, a learned habit of managing other people's comfort so carefully that your own needs go invisible, even to you. And notice who taught you that. Go back again gently. A child who learned that a caregiver's love came and went without warning learns a second lesson on top of the first. Maybe I can earn it back. Maybe if I'm easy, helpful, undemanding, the warmth will stay this time. So the people-pleasing begins, not as a personality, but as a strategy. A small person doing emotional labor far too early, trying to become the kind of child who doesn't get left, trying to be lovable enough to be safe. Here's something worth saying plainly. That strategy worked. That's the part nobody tells you. The fawning, the overgiving, the walking on eggshells, these weren't signs of weakness. They were intelligence. They got you a little more closeness, a little less coldness, a little more predictability in a world that wasn't giving it freely. You adapted brilliantly to an environment that was missing something. The tragedy isn't that you were broken. The tragedy is that you were resourceful, and no one noticed the size of the job. But adaptations have a shelf life. What kept the 8-year-old safe is now quietly running the 30-year-old's love life, and the math no longer works. The same craving reassurance that once pulled a distracted parent's attention now reads, to a steady partner, as something they can't quite satisfy. Not because they don't love you, because the well you're trying to fill was dug a long time ago, by hands that aren't theirs. No amount of present-day reassurance fully reaches a thirst that old. This is the heart of relational trauma, and the word trauma here doesn't mean one giant catastrophe. Often it's the opposite. It's the slow accumulation of small moments where a child needed attunement and got distance instead. A look that didn't come. A comfort that arrived late or not at all. Bessel van der Kolk, who spent decades studying how the body holds these things, put it simply. The body keeps the score. Your nervous system dysregulation isn't a character flaw. It's a ledger, written in flinches, of everything that wasn't said. So what do you do with a ledger like that? You start, strangely, by feeling it on purpose. Next time the tight chest shows up, the unanswered message, the cooling tone, try this. Don't fix it, don't text, don't analyze. Put a hand where the feeling lives and name it out loud. This is fear. This is old. That's not woo. That's you doing for yourself what no one did back then, turning toward the feeling instead of away. This is the first quiet motion of learning to feel safe. Let me return to that one person for a moment, because their turn came in an ordinary way. A partner was slow to reply one evening, and the familiar spiral started up, the racing thoughts, the drafting and deleting. But this time, something interrupted it. They asked themselves a question they'd never asked before. How old does this feeling feel? And the answer arrived instantly with a strange ache. Not 30, maybe 6. The panic wasn't about the partner at all. It had just borrowed their face. That single question changed the geometry of everything. Because once you can feel that the fear is 6 years old, you can do something you could never do at 6. You can stay. You can let the feeling rise without obeying it. You don't have to text. You don't have to chase. You can sit with the alarm and quietly tell it the truth, that the door it's bracing against closed decades ago, and you're the one standing guard over a room that's been empty a long, long time. This is the slow work of self-soothing, and it's worth being precise about what that means, because it isn't bubble baths. It's building, with your own attention, the inner safety nobody installed for you when you were small. It's catching the spiral and asking the age of it. It's writing one line in a notebook. What am I actually afraid will happen? And reading your own answer with kindness instead of judgment. It's learning that you can be the steady presence you kept hoping someone else would finally become. And here's the reframe that takes time to land. The goal was never to stop feeling. People will tell you to just relax, just trust, just stop being so anxious, as if the alarm could be argued away. It can't. But it can be reparented. Slowly, the system that learned love was dangerous can gather new evidence that some love stays. This is what researchers call earned security, safety you weren't given, but can build in adulthood from the inside out. You weren't born anxious, and you're not sentenced to it. Let's slow down on that phrase, some love stays, because your system has reasons not to believe it. For years, the people who felt most like home were often the ones who were hardest to hold, the unavailable ones, the ones who ran a little hot, a little cold. And there's a quiet trap hiding in that. When closeness as a child came tangled up with anxiety, your body learned to confuse the two. Calm started to feel like absence. And tension, that familiar ache of reaching for someone, started to feel an awful lot like love. Go back one more time, because this one matters. Picture that child again, the one tracking a parent's mood across a room. For that child, connection and dread were never separate experiences. They arrived in the same package at the same time. So the nervous system filed them together. That's why, years later, a steady and available partner can feel strangely boring, even wrong, while someone who keeps you guessing feels electric. It isn't that you love chaos. It's that chaos is the only dialect of closeness you were ever fluent in. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. The spark you've chased might sometimes have been a smoke alarm. The intensity you mistook for chemistry was occasionally just your old hypervigilance, lit up, scanning a familiar kind of unpredictable person. This isn't to say every strong feeling is a wound talking. It's to say you finally get to ask the question, is this excitement, or is this my body recognizing something it learned to call love long before it knew what love was supposed to cost? Here's a practice for that, and it's small but sharp. The next time someone steady shows up, kind, consistent, a little unexciting, and you feel that itch to pull away, pause and ask yourself one thing. Am I bored, or am I just safe? Write down what your body's doing. Most people who grew up bracing for rejection discover something humbling here. What they labeled no spark was, underneath, the deeply unfamiliar feeling of not having to perform for affection. Safe felt foreign, so they called it wrong. Because that's the cruel arithmetic of all this. You became an expert at a love that had to be earned. Every gentle thing came with a quiet invoice. Be useful, be easy, be impressive, and maybe you can keep this. So you worked. You proved. You overfunctioned in every relationship, certain that the moment you stopped giving, the warmth would be revoked. And love that has to be constantly re-earned isn't rest. It's a job you can never clock out of, performed by a child who was told, without words, that being was never quite enough. So let me ask you something, and let it sit. What would it mean to be loved on a day you produced nothing? Not your help, not your usefulness, not the version of you that anticipates everyone's needs before your own, just you, ordinary and unremarkable and tired. For many people carrying these inner child wounds, that question lands like a foreign language. They've never tested it. They've spent so long being the giver that they genuinely don't know if they'd survive being simply received. This is where reclaiming your worth stops being a slogan and becomes an actual practice. Try this one, even if it feels strange. Write a short letter, not to your ex, not to a parent, to the child you were. Tell them the thing no one said. That they didn't have to be good to be kept. That the love going quiet was never a verdict on them. Date it. Keep it, because the person who most needs to hear that you were always enough is the small one still waiting inside you. And that child has been waiting a long time. This is the part that tends to break people open, in the good way. Somewhere inside, a younger version of you is still standing near a door, still listening for footsteps, still half convinced that if they just stay quiet and good and ready, the warmth will come back and explain itself. No one ever came to tell that child the truth. It wasn't your fault, and it was never about your worth. So the waiting calcified into a way of being. But here's what's changed, and it's everything. You're not that powerless child anymore. You're the one who can finally walk back to that door and open it, not to wait for whoever didn't come, but to take the child's hand and lead them out of the room. That's what reparenting actually is. Not erasing the past, but returning to it with the steadiness you needed then. You become the adult who stays. The footsteps that child kept listening for, they were always going to be yours. So when the old fear flares, and it will because nervous systems don't get deleted, they get retrained, you'll have somewhere to put it now. The tight chest is information, not instruction. The urge to chase is a flashback, not a fact. You can feel the whole storm move through and still choose to stay rooted, because you finally understand what it's pointing back to. The pattern that felt like a personal defect was, all along, a perfectly logical response to a love that once vanished without warning. And once you understand it, the whole story starts to rewrite itself. You stop asking what's wrong with me and start asking what happened to me, and those are entirely different questions, leading to entirely different lives. One keeps you small, endlessly auditing your flaws. The other hands you back your history with the shame removed. The clinginess was never the truth about you. It was a translation, a small child's best attempt to say I'm scared of being left in the only language a frightened body knows. And translations, unlike verdicts, can always be revised. So let this be the revision. You are not a person who loves too much, or wants too much, or feels too much. You're a person who learned, far too early, that warmth could disappear mid-sentence and never come back to explain. Everything since has been you, trying to make sure it never hurt like that again. That's not weakness. That's a lifetime of devotion to your own survival. And the moment you can see it that clearly is the moment the old story loosens its grip and something quieter and far more true begins. So now you know. The waiting, the watching, the rereading, none of it was ever proof that something's wrong with you. It was proof that something happened to you and that a small version of you adapted with everything they had. So let me leave you with a few questions, and I'd ask you to sit with them rather than rush past them. How old does your fear actually feel when you stop and ask? Whose silence were you really bracing against all those times you thought it was theirs? And what might shift if, the next time that tight chest shows up, you didn't text, didn't chase, didn't fix, but simply put a hand there and said, "This is old, and I'm here now." You don't have to answer those for me. Answer them for the child who's been waiting inside you to finally be understood. And if you're willing, I'd love for you to do one small thing in the comments. Write a single word, just one, that describes the child you used to be. Not who you are now. Who you were then, before you learned to brace. I read those. They matter more than you know. Thank you for staying all the way to the end of this. Not everyone can sit with something this tender without looking away. And the fact that you did says something about where you are now, closer to yourself than you were an hour ago. Here's the truth I want you to carry out of this. You spent your whole life watching the door, certain the love you needed might walk through it or vanish behind it without warning. But the presence you were really waiting for was never going to come from out there. It was you. You're the one who finally came back. So the next time you catch yourself refreshing that screen, waiting for proof that you won't be left, notice who's already there, staying. If this gave you a name for something you've carried quietly, you might find that the rest of this channel does the same. No pressure, just here whenever you're ready to keep looking. But there's a quieter trap hiding underneath all of this, one I want you to notice before you go. Coming back to yourself is one thing. Stopping the wait is another. Because some of us aren't only watching the door for who might leave. Some of us are still standing there for someone who already did, waiting for words that were never coming. The apology. The explanation. The moment they'd finally understand. You can know the door is closed and still keep waiting for it to open,